Epiphany, the Feast of the Epiphany. In the Episcopal mainline tradition, we have just concluded the celebration of 12 days of Christmas. Christmas did not begin after October 31st, when all the decorations went out on the shelves in the department stores. Rather, in the Christian tradition, it is understood that this season of Christmas begins with that sundown service of Christmas Eve on the 24th of December, and then goes for the 12 days following. Last night would have been 12th night, known mostly by us as a play by Shakespeare. But in fact, it was written by Shakespeare for a celebration of 12th night, the end of the Christmas season, with a great festival. The next day signifying Epiphany, the time in our tradition when our story shares with us that the wise men from the east arrived to worship Christ. So, here's the thing about that. I first want to say that my grandma used to say to me, when she would start a traditional story, she would often say, I don't know if this is true, but this happened this way. I don't know if this happened this way, but I know that it's true. And what she was getting to there, and for me, was the idea that history of events is not the only thing that holds truth for us. We know that in our storytelling traditions, or whatever those are, even the storytelling traditions of our family, that some truth is being conveyed in those, whether it's about the character of a person, whether it's an important family event, in the history of tribal nations, in the history that we bring with us from wherever we've immigrated from. In our history, we have stories of faith that tell us something true about how our faith or our faith community understands relationships with God, or the nature of God that we've experienced. So, when I tell you that our historians and anthropologists and archaeologists can find no historical evidence to validate or verify that there were historical events of Herod who sought out Jesus to kill him and to kill infants, is not historically accurate. It doesn't mean that the story does not hold very important truths for our faith community's understanding about the message of Jesus and the event of God's incarnation into the world. There are very significant meanings for us in these stories to explore, and why they are there with such intention by the early Christian community is because they want us to bear these meanings forward, because they are true. So, if you would have noticed at the beginning of our Christmas season, our altar guild did us a wonderful favor in leading the decoration of this space, and that included decorating our high altar. But during the Christmas season of 12 days, you would have perhaps noticed that there were only the animals and Mary and Joseph and Jesus in the manger. There were some people who weren't there yet. In fact, where were they? Did anyone notice where they were hanging out? Because they were in here. Yeah, there's people living there over here. They were hanging out at St. Luke's altar. And yet they made a journey symbolically in an incarnated way for us. This Christmas, they have now moved. They have, my friends, immigrated. I don't see any walls making them not be able to immigrate. Thank God they got there. And they got up here. So let's take a look at what the symbols of our story have told us so far that have been brought forward to us and we have incarnated in the symbol systems that we can touch and see. And even on Christmas Eve, some of us might have even gone to smelling some of the scented oil of frankincense that we had in here that night. But here, first of all, this image of the star. What's so curious about the star is that it was able to travel. Now, in the older days of looking at the heavens, before there was a sense that earth was the thing that was moving, but the sense of watching a journey, and it had a very particular shape and times of years and seasons associated with it. And so that the peoples of the Mediterranean were no different from anywhere else. They associated and understood great meanings associated with the movements of stars and spheres and planets, even if they didn't necessarily call them those things then. One of the groups of people that was aware and studied what would have been understood as the astronomy of the time, portending great events, were the people known as the Zoroastrians in Persia. In ancient Persia, the Zoroastrian religion has its roots going back to at least 10,000 BC. So earliest human communities sort of forming ideals that become the ground for monotheism, the idea that there's one divine God. Zoroastrian has that. And the ancient Persians associated the heavens as being the way that that deity communicated truth. It was set against those kinds of forces that communicated lies. The premise or philosophy of Zoroastrianism was pretty simple and can be summarized in 3 phrases. Be kind with your words. Be kind with your actions. Be kind in your thoughts. So, that's something that informed other religions that then were created and evolved in those settings. It's kind of permeating the whole atmosphere, and the symbol system would have also been picked up in the Abrahamic traditions of Judaism and Christianity and later Islam. So in these basic tenets, the idea of a star that travels is to connect us with a story that tells us something very important that involves the ultimate truth communicated to us divinely through the symbols of the heavens. It communicates, as what we heard in the presentation, I think we're going to be hearing on Wednesday, wisdom. An idea that there is something connecting the human world with the divine world. This relationship is telling us, by just the symbol of the star, that our Christmas story tells us something profoundly important about human relationship with God. So, we follow the story, follow the light of this story. In this relationship that involves the entire created universe represented there, also includes animals. Human relationship with animals, the very earliest times of domesticating these animals, meant an understanding of the interdependence of these species. And so, even the animals are involved in the travel. What kind of animal did Joseph and Mary need to go anywhere?
A donkey.
Donkey. So we have one. Right over there. Symbolizing that travel and the relationship that involves the created world and that travel. And then these guys, where did these guys come from? What did they come in on? Camels. Again, the sense that these economy of camels and human interdependence with such creatures is communicated by this. And then also what was in the ancient Mediterranean sacrificial animal, an ox, but also an animal that was relied upon for labors and cultivation of fields, that's also represented here. So that the salvation moment that's illuminated, that involves the entire cosmos, comes to earth as being born out through relationships in all of creation. So that's been communicated so far. So far, that sounds pretty true. All of that. Now, we have these people, Joseph and Mary. In their travel, it's not over yet. They get to Bethlehem, Christ is born, and they have a dream. Joseph has a dream that he ought not to be going back through Jerusalem, and because Jesus might be in peril. Now, it doesn't historically happen that way, but there is truth. What's being communicated to the early church is the reality of the dangers of the tyranny of the Roman Empire that were true and genuine, that the early church experienced in its persecution is wherever you are in the world bearing the word of Christ, you are in potential peril in the Roman Empire. And so it's no small thing to travel through that empire, an empire based on violence and exploitation of all of this. To travel through that environment with a message of equality and love that levels out the entire hierarchy. That leveling out is what our story communicates to us, as why Herod is fearful. That leveling out means the bringing down of what in the Magnificat of Mary is the bringing down of the elite, bringing down the arrogant, and lifting up the lowly. That story, the story, isn't just a bedtime story that's comforting on Christmas Eve. It's a tremendous subversion of empire. So in this subversive story, we have Mary, who becomes the most powerful element in all of it, because without Mary's yes to God in the relationship with God, none of this happens. And we don't have this story, and we do not have this faith. Mary says yes, and from that powerful relationship with God, God's own self is manifested on earth. Now here's the thing about our stories of faith. When we look back at the Old Testament, when we look at the images in the books of the prophets about how the prophets experienced God, whenever you have an incarnation of God or a presentation of God in any story, we call that a theophany. Nice word, $1 million, you'll win it on Jeopardy. Theophany. Meaning that God has been made present in some way. The ways that God has been made present in the Old Testament and in the prophets is quite amazing. God takes on lots of interesting forms. God takes on lightning and thunder. And in fact, God is so dangerous to encounter that if you look right at God, you can die. You can die. The Holy of Holies in the temple is separated by a curtain. So only the right people and people equipped to see God can see God and not die. Then we have the story of God coming to the prophet Isaiah as somewhat of a human form, riding a cherub. Interesting. And we also have images of God as a pillar of light. Again, you don't want to touch that, you'll die. We have God coming to Moses and revealing as a burning bush, which changes Moses in appearance. He doesn't die, but he suddenly has gray hair. So encountering God is a dangerous thing, all throughout the faith tradition until this story. In this story, this innovation of our faith tradition, not only is God not dangerous, God is completely vulnerable and comes to us in such a way that he is completely accessible. So accessible that there is danger to the life of God. That vulnerability in giving up of all powers that had heretofore been associated with God, the ability to destroy people on contact, gone, let go of. The ability to claim supremacy, gone and let go of. The idea of being born or accessible only to the elite or the chosen few, gone. Everybody gets access. The idea that only the privileged chosen people get to know God, gone. Here come the Gentiles. Look at it. Everybody gets access to God, and truth is no longer a monopoly by one tradition or small group of people who claim it. God calls all people to this place. This is the innovation that challenged not only the empire of Herod, but the empire of the faith tradition, which had been co-opted and was in collusion with empire. Even in our time, when we hear voices claiming an alliance with governments, a government that only seeks exploitation and subjugation of people and alienation of people, when we hear a faith tradition claim, that's okay and we justify it. That is exactly the time when we say, this manger is open to everyone. There is no frickin' wall to this religion. Period. That is the theophany that is incredibly challenging to a confined religious tradition that is frightened and unwilling to come out of its own box or wall that it has constructed for God. Because God will never dwell nicely and calmly in a box in a wall. Anybody's wall. God comes into this world accessible and vulnerable and challenging and offering freedom to all people. A freedom that will have an impact on all creation as being in a relationship with God that is life-giving, providing justice in all of creation, not just for the few who claim themselves righteous. In this amazing subversive story, our story picks out the symbol of the number 3. Where is that signified up here? What are there 3 of? Say again? Wise men. The wise men, sometimes also referred to as the king. There are 3 of them. How many does Matthew say there are? He doesn't say. Nowhere in any of our Gospels is there a number assigned to the wise men. Guess why? Who's the symbol of the wise men? Yah. Everyone who recognizes this God as God is wise. But the symbol of 3 is very important. And it's a way of memorializing the symbol of 3 by kind of associating with the story of Matthew. Because it's Matthew's gospel that for the first time names a theophany of God, a presentation of God, as a triune God of Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. That's Matthew. Matthew says Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Here's also a thing conveyed here. Not only are these Gentiles that are able to recognize divine truth through their own faith system, such that they are brought to the same place. And the idea that there are many pathways to know God frees up any one religious tradition claiming to have the monopoly on God. Because this relationship is what becomes the most important. The representative, let's see, these guys have names in our story as it has evolved over time. We have Melchior, who's generally considered the oldest and wisest. We have Balthazar, kind of middle-aged guy, kind of learning the ropes. And we have our youngest, Casper. Balthazar, Melchior, and Casper representing also the known world in the Mediterranean time or the Roman Empire and the regions or economy in the time, bringing symbols of gold and frankincense and myrrh. The early church interpreted these symbols and assigned them to be forecasting Christ's death. All of those are used or were used in the process of preparing a body for death in the first century Jewish tradition. However, and here's where the symbol is truly on its head. All 3 of those things, gold, frankincense, and myrrh, were used by early midwives in providing medical attention to mothers who just given birth. Gold being used both as something to eat, which you can eat gold, and as something to use topically to resist bacteria and infection. Frankincense and myrrh, frankincense being used to thwart and stop bloodletting for a mom who's still post-labor. And then the myrrh is also something that would strengthen the blood and provide necessary recovery kinds of chemicals and nourishment being eaten. All of these things then tell us that not only are we to understand that God has given us a Christ that sacrifices himself through death, but God has given us one who has brought himself fully alive to the human community through birth. We often talk about worshiping a Creator who promises to make all things new. And then when that newness is introduced to us in life, we completely resist it. We're following a creator God who's continually inviting us to renew our lives, to make journeys to new places, to pay attention to our dreams and allow ourselves to be even more informed by the dreams of our hearts and our spirit, about where we want to go, about where we feel called to go, and about the practical things about whether our family approves of that or not. Or whether sometimes our faith community approves of that or not. Our faith community is called and part of the renewing process, ever-renewing process. Our general convention continues to bring renewing processes to us. We're expanding images of God. But I guarantee you there's people out there who are not comfortable with that. We're expanding gender-inclusive language. That'll be a change for people who really found a meaning in our older versions of worship. But we don't leave anybody behind. Everyone goes on this journey. We do it together. It's a both-and proposition. And boy, does the generation coming up ahead need all of the rest of us to be ready to live a both-and faith. Because the world is only ever in the journey of change. And that is a journey of faith, a journey that brings us in a more meaningful and authentic relationship with God. And so now I conclude this long, long story. Thank you for listening. My voice is thankful to be here today to tell you Jesus' manger is traveling. Where is it? It's in your hearts. And Jesus ascended and left us the Holy Spirit. That Holy Spirit is now the child of Christ within us, who we are called to nurture in one another, to bring forth in ourselves and one another. We are all of us on the journey home, companioning one another on this amazing, cosmic, and very earthly journey to God. In Christ's name.
Amen.